Today we're going to dive into the origin story of Michael Rubin, billionaire CEO of Fanatics. I'm going to try to understand the psychology behind some of the decisions he's made throughout his life, from his childhood and his upbringing, all the way through GSI Commerce and Fanatics to even the white parties. I used to actually do this for executives when I was a management consultant. I'd get behind the psychology of their decisions and try to help them understand how to make better ones. And I think I can apply that same logic here and just understand the paths that Michael Rubin has chosen and ultimately try to figure out where they're going to lead based on what he's already done. So Michael Rubin was born in 1972 and he grew up very middle class. I'm actually going to play a clip in a minute where he describes his house and his upbringing, but essentially he grew up with two doctors as parents. And before you think like, oh, okay, so he was really well off, it seems as though that the parents were actually a bit more frugal than they needed to be. He actually says in this next clip that this home that they lived in today's dollars would be worth about $500,000. For two doctors in today's money, would they have a $500,000 house? Probably not, which gives you the first clue into some of the things that may have impacted his growth and his decision making and how he felt about himself and the rest of the world growing up in Maryland. Check out the clip right now where Rubin talks about that house and his upbringing. I think it's interesting.
I grew up in a very middle class family. I had two parents that were doctors. We lived and by the way, the house that I grew up in today cost $500,000. So it wasn't like we were truly middle class, but like
interesting, right? He made it very clear he wanted to say he grew up middle class, and I believe he did. And even though his parents were doctors, it was a middle class lifestyle, it seems like. But I did a little research, and this house, he's right. He's accurate, actually. It would be worth $500,000 today. This at the time was very below average. So I imagine he probably looked around and his parents were doctors and he was kind of like, well, why is that house nicer and his parents aren't both doctors? I think this might have been the very first chip on his shoulder where he looked around and said, hey, wait a second. And that led to the next story, which is pretty wild, with him selling seeds door to door to start making money at the age of 8 years old.
I was selling seeds at a young age too.
Different kinds.
Just different kinds.
Yeah, yours could have had you locked up.
Yeah,
his was just having to make money.
Right.
But by the way, if I grew up in a different way, mine would have had me locked up too.
So at the age of 8 years old, he's selling seeds door to door. Most kids that are 8-year-old are playing video games or watching TV or whatever. He is literally doing direct door-to-door sales. That's something else. He's probably a born salesman. He says at that point in his life, he wasn't really good at sports, wasn't terribly popular, but he liked business, he liked money, he liked making money, and he did three things. One was the seed business you just heard about. Number two was he loved trading cards, little foreshadowing there for what we're going to get into later. And then the third one, which I found most fascinating, and this is very typical future CEO behavior. You'll find this in all the different biographies, like the Steve Jobs biography, the Elon Musk biography. It's the ability not to trick, but to organize people to do your will and benefit from that organization. So he would actually recruit kids to shovel snow for him, almost organizing this snow shoveling ring around his area, where I don't think he actually had to shovel any snow, which is classic executive behavior. It's one of the common threads in all the great CEOs, for the most part, is their ability to organize teams around them for their benefit early on in their life. So let's flash forward a bit to the age of 12 and find out what he's up to now.
This ski right here, it's great ski right here. It's rather flexible, as you can see. It's for your beginner to intermediate skier who will later progress. This ski, great deal. Go on to your Elon, 545. This ski is the same exact ski as Elon, 550. As you can see, it's a little stiffer up here, and it's pretty soft in the tail. Take it for a nice ride. If you're an intermediate to that advanced skier, seeking a lot of fun in your economy ski. Hey, let's look at some boots. How does that sound? Okay, we gotta do this seriously now. We carry many brands of new and used boots, including Nordica, Wrigley, and Technica. We offer custom boot fitting with biotech orthotics. We are honestly here to help you make the correct choices. Just when you think the ski season is over, you're wrong. You could be skiing in 80 degrees. That's right. Great accessories at low prices is just another example of why you should come to Mike's Ski.
This is an awesome video that he posted on Twitter a while back, and he's 12 years old in this picture. This is his parents' basement, and he's got his own ski tune shop because this was the one sport he actually was good at. He was always good at skiing. He loved it. He was passionate about it, so he opened up this shop in his parents' basement. And this also gives you some clues. He's only 12 years old here, but how many of you think that he actually sounds similar to the way he does today, just from the mannerisms and the way he's using inflection in his speech? The other thing that's interesting too is this is almost like a sales pitch from him to the camera. And in that pitch, he does a couple of things that executives do where he repeats himself a couple times. Many people, Donald Trump does that. Several other people do that. So he's like, this ski right here, this ski right here. Just trying to emphasize the point more. He's still got that style. He will actually repeat himself a couple times to get the point across stronger. But anyway, I thought this was interesting. And what's more interesting, if you flash forward 2 more years to the age of 14, what is he up to then?
And then by the time I was 14, I actually opened my first real retail ski store. It was about 10 minutes from my parents' house.
At 12?
At 14 years old. Yeah,
Wow.
I started in my basement at 12. By the way, when I was 13, I did $25,000 in my parents' basement.
Damn.
No overhead.
No overhead. That's
Made 15
brilliant.
grand. And being a 14-year-old owning a ski shop, you get a lot of media attention. Did buy a Porsche as a 15-year-old, even though I wasn't allowed to drive it yet.
Did you guys catch the 2 major tells in this story? Okay, number 1, when he opened that shop at 14, he didn't just open it quietly and have fun. He actually hired and told the local news crew that a 14-year-old was opening a shop and made a spectacle out of it. They came and filmed it. They put it on TV. And even to this day, 30-something years later, he says, I learned how to get media attention around that shop. That was brilliant for him as a 14-year-old and ultimately leads you down the path of where he's gone with GSI Commerce and Fanatics, even Fanatics Fest with sports cards, right? It's always a spectacle. There's always a ton of media. He's got the A-list people around him. At a very early age, he figured this out, which is pretty amazing. The second major tell there in this story, he didn't open up a Roth IRA with this money at the age of 14 that he was making at this shop. He's obviously a very good businessman. He bought a Porsche. Why do you think he bought a Porsche? Because he's 14 and Porsches are cool when you're 14. But I think there's something there where he was ready to party at a young age. I think the Porsche was a reflection of that. And when he's actually asked in this interview, did you get a lot of girls? He's not a good poker player when that question hit him. He obviously did. And I think this Porsche was a part of it. And I think status became something that really mattered to him right around this age of 14, where most of us, we're not even thinking this way. We don't own businesses. We haven't made hundreds of thousands of dollars. We haven't bought Porsches. We're just kids. But he's already started businesses, learned how to market himself, learned how to make a spectacle, buy something lavish, and reap the benefits of that lavish expense. These are very early drivers of what you can see turns into his path down the road. So let's keep fast forwarding.
When I was 16 years old, I tell this story all the time. This is not an exaggeration or embellishment in any way. I got sued probably 100 times as a 16-year-old. The sheriff used to show up before I went to high school each day. She'd come at like 7:30. I was still at home. She'd say, like, here are today's lawsuits. I'd give her a hug. She'd say hi, and she'd give me the day's lawsuits. But you know what it teaches you? It teaches you that each failure needs to turn into your next success. And so for me, having almost gone bankrupt and then figuring out how to settle my debts because I wasn't even old enough to incur debt.
Oh, this is too good and loaded with so much incredible information. So at the age of 16, what ended up happening was they just didn't get snow one year. And if you have a seasonal business, especially as a 16-year-old that's merchandise heavy, you are screwed if nobody's tuning their skis and using them. And he basically went bankrupt and he had to fulfill contracts for all the things you need for a ski shop as a 16-year-old. But what is very clever here is, he said he got sued 100 times by 100 people. I can't imagine he had that many vendors, but I do believe that he was sued that much. Here's the clever thing. And, Michael Rubin today, everybody says he's ruthless in contract negotiations. And he's tough. He's the guy who likes hostile takeovers and legal action. I think that started right here. I think that he got sued so many times, he was desensitized to it. He says he was hugging the sheriff. It didn't even faze him. Like, to get into a lawsuit with Panini, who cares? Like, let's have a sue party. The other clever thing here is he doesn't talk about this too much, but I've heard him say it in a couple of interviews. He had the ultimate loophole. He wasn't even an adult. So instead of just saying, sorry, I'm a kid, I'm just going to ignore all this, he actually went into negotiations head on with some of these vendors and said, oh yeah, I'm going to use the fact that I'm a minor to not pay you, or you can meet my demands and you can collect 1 penny on the dollar. So holding the fact that he was a minor over their heads, he was able to take this $120,000 in debt and settle it for about $37,000, but he didn't have that money. So he went to his dad and said, hey dad, can I have the money to settle it? And his dad said, on one condition, that you attend college. And Michael Rubin agreed. Now, before I show you his path through college, check out this spectacle when he was 16. He put on around his ski shop. This is almost exactly like Fanatics Fest or the Topps Rip Nights. I find it fascinating. He literally created like a ski mountain in the middle of his town and brought the news stations. So check it out.
Ever heard of Mike's Mountain in Plymouth meeting? Well, that's because it wasn't here before this morning.
If it was up to me, we'd have the Plymouth Square ski hill, and the whole entire parking lot would be a ski hill.
16-year-old Mike Rubin owns Mike's ski shop here in Plymouth meeting, and he wanted to give his business a lift.
Before I talk about Villanova, which is where he attended for 3 weeks, I wanted to show you his report card here that I found. I think he posted it on Twitter a while back. 1.87 GPA. Again, he attended Villanova for 3 weeks. There is one thing I want to mention here. He didn't choose to go to Stanford. He didn't choose to go to the University of Hawaii. He didn't go overseas. He chose Villanova, which is very close to where he lived. Obviously, that tells you he has an affinity for the place he grew up and the people that are around him, which means he's probably a family man. And I can kind of sense that from his behavior now. He likes the people around him. He likes where he lives. And it's why he has a penthouse in New York. And he's not living in Ibiza or, somewhere in Silicon Valley or whatever. He's kind of liked this area and stuck to it. And he's been comfortable here. And I think this college decision was part of that. Or who knows? Maybe it was just easy. I'm going to attend a place that's close by. I know I'm going to drop out in a few weeks, and it'll be super easy because my stuff, I could just move it in a weekend. Let's talk about why he dropped out after 3 weeks, though. That's fascinating. So when Michael Rubin attended Villanova, he was leaving every day at like 11 a.m. to also run his ski shop. So I don't actually think he might say he had intentions of graduating, but I think it was like 10% of his brain thought about graduating. He kept running into situations where, you could borrow a little money and you could make a couple $100,000 flipping like ski closeout stuff. And I think he got addicted to that. Like, who wouldn't get addicted to that? I've made quick cash in affiliate marketing, like paying for my son's college with like a 1-day promotion for a client. That's addictive. You make that kind of money that fast, it's it goes straight into your veins. And I think he looked at that and he's like, why am I here when I could just flip and make hundreds of thousands of dollars? And ultimately that's what led him to drop out. Some reports say 3 weeks, others say 6. He clearly didn't last the semester. He got a 1.87, and then he got a 0 for the second semester, and then he was done. Although I do hear that he regretted this. He did an interview when he was 41. He says he wished he had kind of finished it out. I know his mother's a psychiatrist. She was a bit disappointed. But there was he's a classic entrepreneur. You weren't going to pin him down. He was not going to go through college and then a regular job. It just wasn't going to work for this guy. And this is where the timing is just incredible for him. He started to ramp this up, and all of a sudden, it's the mid-90s. The internet is in its infancy. I was there for Internet 1.0, and it's going to lead into the springboard that finally takes him on the path that leads him to a billionaire CEO. All right, so Michael Rubin is now 23. It's 1995. He has grown this ski business, this closeout business, very successfully. As you can imagine, he's probably buying things cheap, selling them expensive, flipping and making a ton of money. He takes his first gamble here in 95, which is fascinating. And again, it's him seeking closeouts, seeking deals, seeking distressed assets. So I have an article here, I'll throw it behind me, where Michael Rubin, 23-year-old founder of KPR Sports, that's what he ultimately ended up naming the ski business. So at that age, he decided to merge with a company called Ryka, which was sort of a distressed asset at the time, but it was a publicly traded company. It gave him credibility, it gave him liquidity, and ultimately, over the next few years, he grew that. In 1998, Michael Rubin is only 26 years old. He renamed it GSI Commerce, and they were doing sales of $130 million a year. So he took his hustle, he took his ability to find something at a cheap price, sell it for an expensive price. He merged that with the credibility of a distressed public company. And now all bets are off. He's got the visibility of the stock market. He's got an injection of cash, and he could start to do some real damage and make a name for himself. So he kept growing this company and just growing and growing and growing through the internet, taking things online in 99. And then you flash forward in 2011, eBay buys this company that he's just hustled and grown. And at that point of sale, he still owned 10% of the company. Now, I'm certainly not a billionaire, but what I just did was actually pretty unfair. I literally took 12 years of grinding and hustling and working his tail off to get to this eBay sale and only gave it about 20 seconds. That's what entrepreneurship's all about. You hear about the success and you see their net worth and you see a white party, but you don't realize that long tail grind, it's unbelievable. I'm not a billionaire, obviously, but I felt that grind in my own businesses that have done well and my own journey as an entrepreneur. They don't see the 14-hour days or 20-hour days where your buddies are at the beach and stuff like that. He hustled, he grew this company, and I could tell by the way he's run his businesses up until this point, he was probably just constantly seeking out stuff that he could buy cheap and sell expensive and sell efficiently, make a name for himself. And ultimately it led to that sale, which at that point he's minted and can do just about anything. He could pitch to any investor anywhere and start any company. And so now he's going to take GSI Commerce, and let's see what the next chapter looks like as we lead into the Fanatics timeline. So as part of this eBay sale for $2.4 billion, Michael Rubin also agreed to take on Fanatics, and he agreed to buy it for $500 million. And that began the Fanatics journey. This also started his journey in professional sports team ownership. I know he doesn't own a piece anymore, but at the time, after that sale in 2011, he was obviously flush with a lot of money from that sale. He bought, he was a partner in the Philadelphia 76ers basketball team, and he was also invested in the New Jersey Devils hockey team in 2013. I think it was through Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment. That was the holding company that this is part of, obviously for tax reasons and yada, yada, yada. He eventually sold all of that in June 22, but that was an interesting thing here. He was smart enough and I think passionate enough about sports and the area. And, you know, he just loved this stuff. I think part of it is he just wasn't really good at sports, but he loved them other than skiing. You know, he mentioned this many, many times in the interviews. And I think that's part of this. He's like, let's just own a sports team and I'll feel good about it, you know? Obviously, it's a smart decision because usually sports teams appreciate at a very good rate that's above inflation. I imagine he did well when that holding company sold these a few years ago. But another interesting path there. But back to Fanatics. So this is actually a funny story. I was actually directly involved myself in the early growth of Fanatics. So if you take that timeline from 2011 to 2014, I was very early in my affiliate marketing journey. I was working with agencies, getting promotions to go viral, and just making a ton of money. And I was watching this young company called Fanatics, who was on all the different affiliate networks, and they seemed to be buying like a new license every day. I would go to try to promote WWE products, and then Fanatics would go buy them. I would try to promote the Boston Celtics, and Fanatics would buy the NBA license, and football, and so on and so on. And I thought to myself, like, who is combining all of this stuff into one company? And it was such a pain because I had to figure out who the decision maker was at Fanatics so I could work with them and promote their products. And they were very tough to get in touch with. I ultimately did work with them and I made a ton of money for them and for myself, which is hilarious because now I'm in sports cards. also interfacing with Tops and other companies like this. So Rubin probably doesn't know this, but I probably did $10-20 million in sales alone by myself as a one-man band for some of these companies that were previously decentralized, and now he brought it onto one umbrella, and I just cranked them out through an affiliate program. The guy who runs it is actually still running it today, and a very good friend of mine, which is so funny. But anyway, so this is what he did. He went out, he had experience with ski equipment, and he had experience with buying stuff cheap, distressed assets, and making them expensive, and super aggressive. Again, it's that early childhood, he was sued 100 times when he was a certain age, right? And he has no fear. So he just went after these licenses aggressively, and there were probably some hiccups along the way, but he built this massive company out of it, meanwhile increasing his profile, his net worth, his credibility, and now it's game over. He's heading into the stratosphere. All right, this is a sports card channel. I am not going to bore you with the entire Fanatics path. You can go on CNBC, watch old videos, go on his Wikipedia. You can find out about all the different transactions. There's one deal in particular with Nike that really kind of set the stage, but I want to actually get into the Tops acquisition because it was actually a really cool deal between a few very successful people. One very aggressive, upcoming billionaire, Michael Rubin, and Michael Eisner and his business partner, Madison Dearborn. So this was January 2022. Fanatics bought the Topps physical cards and digital collectibles. Remember, NFTs were a thing, not so much anymore. And Eisner and Dearborn kept the candy and greeting card divisions. And the interesting thing here is that people ask, like, Rubin, why did you do this? What I think personally is that trading cards really started his life in entrepreneurship. If you go all the way back to when he was 8, it was getting people to shovel snow for him. It was selling seeds door to door, and it was flipping trading cards, right? So it's near and dear to his heart. He saw this company, and he bought it for $500 million. And I think Topps, again, was a distressed asset. It was struggling. They had terrible sales and operating issues, and he thought, like, that's what I do. I take crappy ski equipment and I sell it for a lot of money. I take crappy brands and I sell them for a lot of money. He's been doing this his entire life. He's been buying something cheap that's distressed or has a problem with it, and he's been selling it like it's gold his entire life. Topps is no different. So he makes the transaction and decides to ramp things up and print and print and print. Meanwhile, Eisner and Dearborn, they make a 55% return in like 2 years. I think it was like $100 million return, like not a bad day at the office. So everybody's pretty happy. I'm going to close this out in a minute with where I think Rubin's going with Topps and Fanatics based on his past behavior and the decisions he's made as a businessman and as a person over these last 30 years. But before I do, one quick side tour into the hot topic, white parties. So in 2021, Michael Rubin had his Bridgehampton home, obviously this really nice house in the Hamptons, did a housewarming party, and like most awesome housewarming parties, we all wear white. That's just something we do at high-end parties. But this became famous because he had all the people there and all the people that mattered, all the A-list celebrities. And I think this all goes back to when he was 8 years old. He's in this upper middle class neighborhood. He's got a psychiatrist and both his parents are doctors. They're well off. He's in a house that isn't as nice as his friend's house. I'm imagining that extended to their cars. They were probably frugal. And he had this energy when he was younger. He just wanted more. Like, he just wanted more out of life. I mean, who buys a Porsche at 14, right? Like, that's somebody that really wants to make a splash in life and kind of get some status. And I think that really was a harbinger of what was going to happen with these parties. He started making money. He started really making money as Fanatics ramped. And his first big purchase, like, let's christen this thing with a massive party that's a spectacle, because I think status matters to Michael Rubin a lot. I think he really cares how he appears on TMZ or CNBC, everything from TMZ to CNBC to Wall Street Journal. I think he's the type of executive that looks and cares, and this matters to him, where some executives, like the CEO of JetBlue, they're never going to look. They're never even going to open their phones. They don't care. I think Rubin actually genuinely cares what people think about him because, again, remember, he wasn't that good at a lot of things except business, right? And this is his business, and he wants people to think he's awesome at it. And personally, I actually do think he's awesome at it. This is a very legendary rise. He's done a great job at sales, and he's done a great job at recognizing opportunity at the right time. That is everything. Just ask Mark Cuban, right? Couple years off, and Mark Cuban is not a billionaire. Maybe he would have done it with something else, but that company it's just timing. Timing was everything, how he sold that. Same thing with Rubin. He worked his ass off. He's a natural salesman. He flipped his way to success. Here's my prediction for Rubin and sports cards and Topps and Fanatics and this whole thing, right? We've watched him rise. We've gotten to understand his personality, what's important to him. We've understood his sales style, his negotiating style, the tactics he's used to get these licenses. And you can start to see a trend here. You can start to build an archetype of a person. And I think what's happening here is Michael Rubin saw a distressed asset in Topps. He got it for a great price of $500 million. I guarantee you he's going to sell it for more than $500 million when he's done with it. He's going to do that. I'll get to that in a second. He's going to make more off of it than $500 million easily during his time there with these licenses that he's in a very hostile way winning and taking over. Because again, he has no fear of lawsuits whatsoever because he was sued 100 times at the age of 15. Doesn't care. It just bounces off of him. I think he is using Topps to get to an IPO. It's splashy. It prints money. He's using it to fund the gambling peg of this three-pegged company, so the Fanatics betting side of things. That's an expensive endeavor with several competitors, and he's got to get to an IPO to have that extra liquidity to compete in that business. And if he does, it takes it from he's a billionaire now, and that's something, right? But now it takes him to if he pulls off the IPO, eventually I think he'll divest Topps. It served its purpose. I think what he wants is to be like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. He wants to be that next echelon of billionaire. He's not there yet. Obviously, very successful guy and a billionaire. And I actually do admire him. I'm probably going to get a lot of crap for that, but I really admire this path of hustle and negotiating and just recognizing buying something cheap and selling it for a lot more. And I think it's going to serve him well. The only piece of advice, if he's watching this, I'd say the one piece of kryptonite for Michael Rubin is that going back to that Porsche when he was 14, it's like if any of you have seen Citizens Kane and, Rosebud with the sled, like he thinks back to a time when he was a kid and things were more simple. I think Rubin, he's really accelerating things in terms of spend and visibility and these parties. This could cost him if he says something wrong, he does something stupid, he gets caught with the wrong person, does something with P. Diddy or whatever. That could bring this all down. So my advice to him would be to act more like a prudent JetBlue CEO and just cool in on the public image. He's done such a good job. You've already won the game, Rubin. You've already won the game. You don't need to keep risking it. Just focus on business. You'll get there. You don't see Elon Musk throwing white parties. You don't see Steve Jobs throwing white parties. Maybe he likes it. I understand. But I think that is his kryptonite. He needs to be very careful there. He could be trapped in some weird situation. Focus on the business. Get to that IPO. Then when he IPOs, what is he going to do? He's going to take that extra money. He's going to find a distressed asset somewhere, and he's going to make more money off of it in the future. He's had an amazing life so far. It's going to be interesting to see the next 2 to 5 years for him. I'm kind of really excited to, who knows, maybe somebody will write a biography about him someday. Pretty cool. But I don't know, I put a lot of work into this. Hopefully you guys liked it. I hope he watches it. I know he follows me on Instagram, which I'm pretty humbled by, actually. I know I'm critical of Topps sometimes, but I am not critical of him whatsoever as an entrepreneur. I'm actually pretty honored that he follows me. So hopefully he sees this and watches it, because I think it's a cool story. And you think if you got a kid that's that's 8 right now. You can start to think of different things you can do for them to set them on this path. But this guy was built different in terms of sales and aggressiveness and just, deal making. So good for him. Thanks, everyone. Subscribe if you haven't. Got to say that at least once, right? Bye, everybody.